I think we will officially get started, and definitely one of the hazards of this virtual life we all have is the email buzzing in as we're speaking. So I'm sorry about that ding. But welcome everyone. It is really good to be here this morning with you all talking about such an important subject. And it's especially great to be here with my fellow presenters and panelists today. I have the pleasure of introducing First Lady Shannon Ginther at the end of my remarks. And I also don't want to let the moment go by without thanking Auditor Megan Kilgore, Denise Robinson, Signe Mary McKernan, Netta Whitman, and but all of you for being here with us. And then also shouting out our amazing city staff who have done an incredible job throughout this whole process. Shelley Biding, who's the Executive Director of the Women's Commission, Karina Johnson, who's in Council's Legislative Research Office, and Kelsey Ellingson, who's my aide. So it's a lot of names I just started with, but each of them is a hero. And each of them, she has been doing incredible work. It's a gang of incredible women. And there's good reason too, that we're gathered here today with all of you and with this group of fantastic women, because the subject is so important to the health, vibrancy, and future of our city. The city's financial empowerment roadmap, which we released earlier this year, clearly presents the challenges that far too many families are facing in Columbus, especially Black women and Latinas. The need to address and improve the financial security of women in Columbus was clear already when the city successfully applied for grant dollars from the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund last fall. But as we know, that need is even more pronounced now in the face of COVID-19, a pandemic that continues to disproportionately impact those same women and families who were already struggling before the crisis began. I think a lot about a headline that I saw several months ago, which called the COVID-19 recession the first female recession. That the job losses, the unemployment, and the financial struggles hit women first and worst in this crisis. And this was Forbes, and they looked over 50 years at 8 economic downturns, and this by far had the largest impact on women. But we can't say just women, because as we peel back those layers, again, we know that unemployment is hitting Black women and Latinas the hardest. Leveling the playing field for every family through this financial empowerment work is a critical foundation that must be established as we recover from this crisis. Even when the pandemic is behind us, even when that fear of spread is behind us, we know that the economic pain must be directly addressed in order to fully recover. Improving access to reliable credit, banking services, household budgeting assistance helps families build that foundation from which all of us can recover. This roadmap leverages financial wellness data, community partners, and the voices of real Columbus mothers to identify opportunities that bring financial security within reach. I want to highlight that when the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund came to Columbus after we won this grant, they told us that we were the first city to put women at the forefront of this work. The fact that it was our Women's Commission that partnered with us to do this made an impact on Columbus's application. So I'm truly grateful for the leadership of the panelists who are on with me today, and of course, of that incredible, the city team that has really advanced us to this point. Finally, I want to thank all of you for joining us and for prioritizing financial empowerment for Columbus families. Public input was a key part of creating this roadmap, and it will continue to guide our efforts as we move forward. If there are questions for any of our presenters or in general, you can share them in the Facebook chat. We will do our best to address them. there will be a question and answer portion of the webinar. I'd also really like you to, I'd really like to encourage you to introduce yourselves, all of the attendees. Please do so in the Q&A function so that everyone can see it rather than the chat. I think that was the instruction that I got, to make sure that everyone can actually see you introducing yourself. And yes, the Q&A box rather than the chat. So please interact, and let's try to make this as much of a community experience as we can. So with that, I am pleased to introduce our next speaker, First Lady Ginther, Chair of the Columbus Women's Commission. As I mentioned, the Women's Commission has been such an important leader in this work, and that comes from the guidance and leadership of the First Lady, who has really visioned what a Women's Commission can be and can aspire to in Columbus. And we're so proud that this work has been, the partnership on this work has been a hallmark of that. So with no further ado, I kick it over to you, First Lady Ginther.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Council Member Brown, for that warm introduction. And I want to echo your gratitude this morning to all many very important work. When we as a Women's Commission kind of started to think about how we could impact the city, one of the things that we knew was that women were falling behind. They were struggling. And this was before the global pandemic. We are now reading very startling reports about a disproportionate impact on women, especially women of color. And so our goal as the Women's Commission has always been to convene and come together to see what we could do to impact the city for all women. And this is a perfect example of how we can partner to do just that, and drawing some national attention to some of the work we're doing here in Columbus to improve the lives of women and families. And we know that much work remains to be done to achieve gender equity, and perhaps this is in fact recessions, one of those periods where we're taking one step back, each we're hearing about. I have the privilege to introduce the Women's Commissioners, and a woman who I respect deeply for her commitment to women and families in this community, Denise Robinson. She is a Women's Commission Commissioner, as well as the CEO of Alvis. She, of course, leads with passion and energy and seeing everybody, especially women and families. So, Denise, thank you for all of your work, and I will turn it over to you.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for inviting me here today. I'm honored to serve on the Columbus Women's Commission and be part of this movement. I'm working in conjunction with Council President Pro Tem Elizabeth Brown, the city's First Lady and Executive Director of the Women's Commission, Shannon Ginther, and the Executive Director of the Columbus Women's Commission, Shelley Biding. It has shown me firsthand the depth of their commitment to the women and families who are struggling in our community. One of the best things about Columbus is the dedication of the city's leadership to find solutions to difficult challenges. COVID-19 has made us much more aware of the financial insecurity in our community. The stakes are even higher for those at the bottom of the economic ladder. The women and families we work with are among the most vulnerable in our city. All of their lives, they struggled with poverty, addiction, educational deficits, and so much more. Generational poverty has meant that many have never known any other way of living. Some of the barriers they face can be bridged by treatment services, while others, like chronically low wages, require systemic change. Nearly all of the women we serve believe that becoming financially empowered is unlikely and out of reach. Every journey begins with planning and taking the first steps. That's why it's so important to have a comprehensive strategy and a roadmap to get started. This roadmap has an incredibly detailed strategic framework to achieve the goals of alignment, access, and opportunity. I don't know about you, but I get really excited when I see strategy like that. And I'm thrilled that Alva's clients and staff participated in the focus groups and boot camp to build this strategy. The good news is that we have already made progress on our journey. In our financial literacy program at Alva's, we ask our clients, if you took a picture of your financial situation right now, would you like it? Most immediately, they all respond no. Then we talk about a picture as a reflection of a moment in time. It can be deleted and replaced with a better picture. Ensuring that women and families in our community have the tools to take a better picture is precisely what this roadmap lays out. The map identifies and addresses all of those needs. I am so excited to be at the beginning of this road trip. Our community rests on the shoulders of women and children and families, making sure they are healthy and whole physically, mentally, and financially, and that they have the opportunity to thrive, not just survive. It's essential. I am confident that working together, we will help women and families create thousands of new and beautiful pictures that Columbus will be proud of and will share. Thank you so much for having me today.
Okay, let's see, let's get this started. Okay, so I think everyone can hear me. So thank you so much, Denise. And also thank you to Council President Pro Tem Brown and the First Lady. Now we're going to be transitioning to the data sharing segment of the presentation. And to frame things up, we're going to be focusing on 4 main topics today. What we know about our residents' financial security, the barriers women and families face in achieving financial security, why municipal investment in financial empowerment is important, and how we believe the city and its partners can contribute to improving financial outcomes for our families. Now, before we dive in, we're going to do a quick poll. So bear with me. Hopefully this works out well. We're going to do a quick poll to get our brains warmed up. So I have a question for you that's on the screen. And in order to participate, you just need to go to menti.com, your cell phone, your computer, if you can multitask. So just go to menti.com and then enter the code on the screen, 22883977. So hopefully everyone can participate. We'll give this a minute. I'm going to do it as well. And you're going to get an opportunity to enter a word or a short phrase, what financial empowerment means to you. So I'm going to go ahead and put something in. Awesome. Okay, this is fun. I'll give it another few seconds. Looks like freedom, security, stability. Yeah. Okay, this is super fun. I could watch this for a while, but I'm going to transition back. I'm glad to see folks are participating and that this is working, because we're going to do a poll in a few minutes or a little bit later. Okay, so we're going to transition back. Thank you, everyone who participated. So back to the data. So we're going to have a couple speakers for you today. We'll have 3 presenters and then time for Q&A at the end. Feel free to add your questions to that Q&A box throughout the presentation, and you can also raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question out loud. There is a raise hand icon somewhere kind of around the middle of that, that white box on the side if you're on WebEx, or if you're on Facebook, you can add questions to the comments there. So now I have the pleasure of introducing our next 2 speakers. First up will be Columbus City Auditor Megan Kilgore. Auditor Kilgore took office in 2018, and her office oversees the city's finances, including income tax and debt management. Auditor Kilgore is also an adjunct professor at the John Glenn College of Public Affairs at The Ohio State University, where she teaches a graduate level course in public finance. After Auditor Kilgore, we'll have the pleasure of hearing from Signe Mary McKernan. Signe Mary serves as Vice President of the Center on Labor, Human Services, and Population, and Director of the Opportunity and Ownership Initiative at the Urban Institute. Signe Mary is a wealth and financial well-being expert and co-editor of the book Asset Building and Low-Income Families. Okay, now I'm going to hand it over to Auditor Kilgore.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here joining my colleagues from Columbus City Council and the Women's Commission, and also a special thank you to Albus and the Urban Institute for your contributions today as well. As auditor, I've long believed in the importance of financial empowerment and its interconnected relationship to things like housing and transportation, employment and financial security, and so on. But going through COVID, its importance has been amplified. Simply put, this has been the most inequitable economic event in a century or more. The longer we experience these limitations of COVID, the deeper its effects will be and will take to remedy. And that's what we see, on this first slide. The research is hyper clear. The wealth gap between white and Black families not only persists, but it's growing wider and will continue to grow wider as we face longer periods of duration with COVID. Here in Columbus, Black Americans, and particularly Black women, are more likely to be affected by COVID and to frankly be in positions of vulnerability as a result. If I could, let's move to the next slide, and I want to start talking a little bit about what we're seeing here locally. And that's kind of how I'd like to set the stage. I'd like to share a little bit about our local economy, and then also how it's affecting the city's financials. And some of you who might work in social services, you'll be able to have a little taste as to what we anticipate 2021 to look like as well. So these are two, frankly, very simple but very famous symbols, right? And these are the best ways that I can describe the city's experiences with COVID as an economic event. At first, going back to March, April, and May, our first and initial reaction to COVID looked a lot like the Nike swoosh, that ubiquitous symbol of immediate drop and then a gradual incline. And that's, not only when the economy was quote unquote closed, but also because businesses simply could not work. There was a quick drop and then a gradual incline as, maybe businesses were able to pivot using electronic commerce, or businesses were able to safely reopen. What's happening now is that we're seeing a deepening of our effects. And the letter K, which some of you may have seen be discussed at the national level, is something that we're absolutely seeing here locally in Columbus. Following that initial fallout, we are now seeing certain populations, specifically those individuals who have been able to maintain employment or who have been able to regain permanent employment, largely continue on an upward trend. Conversely, those who have been affected by long-term job loss or by other factors limiting their employability are showing already significant declining economic statistics. I want to kind of talk you through a little bit of what we're seeing. So let's hop to the next slide. This is the initial jobless claims. And it's hard to maybe read the small print for some viewers at home, but you'll see, the height of initial jobless claims, folks saying, they're out of work, was absolutely in March. April, May, June, you'll see a slight decline. But let's go to the next slide, because this is really where the story is starting to be told. This is how the letter K is forming. We are now seeing a deepening of true long-term job loss around here. While those temporary layoffs have slowed every month since April, the permanent job losses have increased. And you'll see that reflected in the slide, kind of the converse. That's the letter K of those who are having the downward slope and are going to be experiencing a lot of tough times. Now I'd like to morph over to, we have to understand our local economy to understand how it's going to affect our city. Our city is, we're the 14th largest city in the country. And so we have a lot of work to do in figuring out, and this is the Finance Chair Liz Brown's role, how our budget is going to best serve our citizens around here. As auditor, one of my core responsibilities is to come up with what we call the official revenue estimate. This is the prediction of all total revenues in a future year, and it sets the ceiling on what the budget can be from an expense side. So if my office thinks, the total revenues for the city are going to be X, the budget cannot be more than X. That's a very important check and balance here. A few weeks ago, we revised the revenue estimate for 2020. We also published our revenue estimate for 2021. That's why you see a lot of discussions really being had right now around the city's budget. I offer this chart because I think it's really important to understand how COVID is affecting the city with some historical context. And let me start by sharing, we bring in almost 80% of our revenues into the general fund from one single source. That's income tax. Our wages, taxes on wages or businesses' profit, that's almost 80% of our city's revenues, and everyone pays 2.5%. Given that we're so heavily sourced by a single revenue, a tax on these wages, financial empowerment is particularly interesting here because if we find successful policies, we're able to see the needle quickly move. And that's why I'm in my office and so dedicated to this financial empowerment roadmap. Today, our general fund revenues are down about -2%. This is tough. That's over 2019 revenues. But I want to, kind of share with you, I get asked this question a lot. How does the present economic event here in Columbus compare to the Great Recession, what we experienced in the mid-2000s? As you can see, 2002, 2003, 2008, and 2009 were all tough years. The critical difference, there are two. One is duration, and the second is technology. Duration was our trouble last, 02, 03, 08, and 09. Just like if you get behind on rent at home, or if you're behind in maintenance on your house, when it snowballs and it builds up over time, it creates more lasting effects. Same thing is applying with COVID today. And the good news is that we entered COVID with good financial reserves here at the city. We had a period of recent economic expansion, but the critical word that I'm using is the word duration. The longer we get into it, the longer we're going to have issues as a city, as a state, and certainly with the households here in Columbus, women and families in particular. So let me share with you the next slide. This is the word technology. This is something else that I'm also seeing a great difference in 08 and 09. That's because this is a chart from Goldman. They show at the bottom half all of the new technologies that have been added since the Great Recession. And if you're asking where can we as city officials right now best help our small businesses, it's going to be through the usefulness of technology, and that goes from education all the way to commerce, as well as getting access to credit, getting access to monies to simply pay bills, getting access to rental assistance, and so forth. I give a lot of credit. It just so happens right now that 4 of our largest banks are headed by women regionally around here right now. We have spectacular weekly conversations, and those banks, the Urban League and others, I'm very proud as auditor to be working with them because that's our key to success. Denise, I love the way that you talked about financial empowerment being the bedrock of our city's fiscal well-being, and that's certainly more true today than ever before. So thank you for allowing me to share a little bit. I think I'm going to turn it over to Sydney now to talk from the Urban Institute.
Thank you. The Buckeye presence is felt throughout the country, including at the Urban Institute, where many of my colleagues have roots from Ohio. Today, I'll draw on Urban's research, Thriving Residents, Thriving Cities, which looks at ways that family financial security matters for cities. And in this research, we provide empirical evidence on the link between family and city financial health. So the financial health of cities depends on having financially secure residents. And just going back to the previous slide, is what we see is that when families have little to no savings and experience a disruption in their income or expenses, and 60% of them will in a year, and in a year like COVID, it'll be much higher than that, then they're more likely to miss paying bills, and that has serious consequences, not just for them, but also for the city, like eviction or utility shutoff. And then when utilities are city-owned, like I think the water company is in Columbus, then non-payment of utility bills also directly affects revenue. There are also significant costs associated with collecting delinquent debt and turning off city services. More than half of Columbus families, 57% or 202,000 households, were financially insecure well before COVID. And that meant that they had less than $2,000 in savings. The family insecurity of these families cost the city of Columbus an estimated $17 to $39 million in the form of evictions and unpaid property taxes and utility bills. So why less than $2,000 in savings as a measure of financial insecurity? Well, our research suggests that families with a savings cushion of as little as $250 to $749 are less likely to be evicted or miss a housing or utility payment when an income disruption occurs. And families with higher savings, over $2,000, are more financially resilient than middle-income families living paycheck to paycheck. So if you're low income and able to save $2,000, you're better off than a middle-income family who is without savings. Another way to measure the financial health of Columbus residents is through their credit scores, which estimate the perceived risk of delinquency on a debt or a line of credit. And overall, 38% of Columbus residents have a subprime credit score, signifying high risk and then limited access to credit. And having a subprime credit score is costly. A consumer with a subprime credit score can expect to pay almost twice as much when they need to repair their car, 3 times as much when they need to buy a refrigerator, 3 times as much for a car loan. And if you want to buy a house and you have a subprime mortgage, you can expect to pay $90,000 more on that mortgage. Having delinquent debt is another indicator of financial distress. And what we see in Columbus is that more than 1 in 3, or about 36% of Columbus residents have delinquent debt. So they're 60 days or more past due, or their debt's in collections. And why is a measure of delinquent debt important? Well, we just talked about credit scores, and delinquent debt can lower household credit scores. And then also credit report information can be used to determine eligibility for jobs, rental housing, and then also insurance premiums. So there's going to be a lot of Columbus residents looking for jobs, and what's on that credit report is important. And there are geographic disparities within Columbus itself. So here, if I look at neighborhoods with the highest share of delinquent debt, and I'm just going to say a disclaimer here that these are our best guesses based on some of my ex-Columbus residents at Urban Institute in terms of the neighborhood names. But the neighborhoods with the highest share of delinquent debt are Franklinton, Linden, South Side, South Franklinton, and the ones with the lowest are Westerville, Shawnee Hills, Powell, and Upper Arlington. Infant mortality and maternal access to healthcare are important. And in these data, we can also see how many Columbus residents struggle with delinquent medical debt. 1 in 6 residents has medical debt and collections. Ohio expanded Medicaid, though 9% of Franklin County residents are still uninsured, and 13% in communities of color. So family financial security isn't just important for families, it's important for the cities that they live in. And after an income disruption, a financially insecure family is 14 times more likely to be evicted. And eviction is a growing cause of homelessness, which is costly for people and it's also costly for the city. After an income disruption, a financially insecure family is 3 times more likely to miss a housing payment and 3 times more likely to miss a utility payment. So there are steps that cities can take to improve residents' financial health, and Columbus is taking them through the Financial Empowerment Roadmap. It's been an honor to be a part of this process. If you want to dig deeper into the financial health of Columbus residents, you can look at our Thriving Residents, Thriving Cities resources, where we provide many more statistics for Columbus. On the next slide, we also have an interactive map on urban.org that shows the geography of debt at the national, state, and county levels. And you can check out Franklin County. Just wanted to say thank you to our JP Morgan Chase and the Annie Casey Foundation for their support. And thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Signe Mary. Let's see. I am going to be rounding out the data portion of our presentation. Let me turn my video on. Let's see, there I am. Okay, so let me start by briefly introducing myself and telling you a bit about the financial empowerment work that's happening at the city. So my name is Karina Johnson, and I am a part of City Council's Legislative Research Office. I have the pleasure of working closely with the Columbus Women's Commission and Council President Pro Tem Brown's office on initiatives to increase the financial security of women and families in Columbus. Now, before I start, we have one more poll for you to complete. So we're going to head back to Menti. See if I can get this to work. Okay, so we're going to head back to Menti, and we are going to answer a multiple choice question this time. So go ahead and get your phones out and go back to menti.com. I'm doing it with you, so I'm speaking out loud here. Put in your code. It's on the screen, and I'll go ahead and make this full screen. Oh, you guys are faster than me. Okay, so pick up to 2 choices, what you think are the top financial difficulties experienced by families in Columbus. I'm not going to participate because I have some insider knowledge based on what's coming next, but let's see what you guys think. Looks like rent is definitely in the lead, followed by utility bills. Give it another couple seconds, see if anything changes. Okay, so it looks like our top 3 choices are rent, utilities, and childcare. I'm writing that down so I can remind you later. Okay, so here's the agenda for my presentation. I'm going to start by sharing the background for this work and some highlights from the Financial Empowerment Roadmap. And then I'll end by updating you on the launch of the first initiative from the roadmap and how you can help. Then we'll have time for questions at the end. So the work I'll be discussing with you today started last summer when we applied for a City Start grant from Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund. Their work is focused on helping cities embed financial empowerment into existing services and policies. What that means is that they believe that our financial security as a city depends on the financial security of our residents. And I think you've heard that probably 3 or 4 times so far this morning. So if there was a quiz, hopefully you'd all get that one right. They also believe that cities have a responsibility to support residents by providing financial empowerment resources as a free public service. As a result of the grant, we released our Financial Empowerment Roadmap in September. The purpose of the roadmap is to help coordinate, support, and grow Columbus's financial empowerment services and systems. The roadmap identifies several key initiatives that aim to connect women and families to economic opportunity and reduce their financial barriers. So why women and families? Well, we all know that women are vulnerable in all the ways in which they are vulnerable, but for us, it really came down to one key statistic, which felt like a call to action when thinking about financial empowerment. Last year, the Women's Fund released a report that showed that in Central Ohio, women are the most financially vulnerable. Specifically, single women with children were twice as likely as any other household type to be in poverty. The other shocking fact is that the next household type most likely to be in poverty is single women without children. This means that the average single dad is still more financially secure than a single woman with only herself to support. This underlined for us that women need our help the most. Not surprisingly, women have also been hardest hit by COVID. Women are more likely to have lost their job, as they're more likely to work in food service, in retail, and in many industries that support the travel industry. Many of the workers in those jobs are women of color. For example, a majority of maids and housekeepers in travel accommodations and clothing and shoe store cashiers are women of color. Even before the pandemic, women were the majority of low-wage workers, so they were less likely to have sick leave, health insurance, or childcare options. Now, if you've read the report, you know that there's a lot of good data included and a lot of shocking statistics. I won't have time to dive into all of them, so instead I'm just going to highlight what I feel are the top 2 key opportunities for impact under each category. And we'll start with what the numbers told us. So similarly to what Signe Mary shared, nearly 60% of communities of color in Franklin County have some form of delinquent debt, with a median debt of nearly $1,400 that needs to be repaid to achieve prime credit. Second, more than 60% of Hispanic and Black households in Columbus have what's called liquid asset poverty, which means they lack enough resources to make ends meet for 3 months at the poverty level if their income is interrupted. So here's a question for you. What does it mean for the city's financial health when a significant portion of our residents are burdened with debt and unable to survive an income disruption? Now, on the stakeholder side of things, here's the top 2 points I would like to share. We sent out a survey to our organizational stakeholders, including partner nonprofits, city employees, philanthropy, and financial institutions. They told us the top 2 roles the city should take in financial empowerment were setting the financial empowerment vision for Columbus and supporting systems change. So how do you think we can lift up financial empowerment as a citywide priority? And how do we support financial empowerment systems change? The last key finding I will share relates to what we heard from residents we spoke to. And for me, this was probably the most surprising of our findings. So this is also an opportunity to compare to the poll that we took, that you guys shared what you thought were the top financial difficulties that residents experience. We held focus groups with 27 women. The participants were mostly lower income with a range of ages and from communities throughout the region. The top 2 barriers we heard from our participants were transportation and debt. On the transportation side, we heard that car repairs were the biggest barrier to achieving financial security. But we also heard a lot about difficulty accessing car loans, car insurance, licensing, and registration. On the debt side, we heard the most about student loan difficulties, but debt in general came up too. So you can see here on the slide, car repair was number 1, followed by student loans, and then rent payment and healthcare costs, and then utility bills. So on our poll, we felt that, let's see, what do I have? We felt that rent, utilities, and childcare would be the top 3. So my last question to consider is what opportunities exist in addressing the transportation and debt relief needs that residents face? So that brings us to the launch of our Financial Navigator pilot. the first initiative we're implementing from the roadmap. This is a rapid response effort focused on helping residents navigate all of the available resources and develop a personalized action plan according to their needs and eligibility. Here's some detail on what financial navigators do. A typical session is about 15 to 30 minutes. This gives the navigator time to understand the caller's financial circumstances and needs. Navigators provide referrals, but they also help the caller create a personalized action plan. And the action plan helps the caller have the most detailed information possible that fits their unique situation and eligibility. A resident can be placed on the list to get a call from a financial navigator through an online form or by calling 211 and selecting option 4. The online interest form can also be filled out by you on behalf of your clients. On average, it takes a navigator 24 hours or less to call the resident back. So I will say Financial Navigators is just the first initiative that we launched, and this was particularly because of COVID-19. But we are not losing sight of the things that we heard from our residents in regards to transportation and debt. And then we also have some exciting things in store for 2021 that Kelsey from our team is going to share in a bit. In closing, we are excited to work with you all to move into the implementation phase of the roadmap. We hope that you all see one or more places where the roadmap aligns with your organization's work. We, of course, would love your help getting the word out on our Financial Navigator pilot, and we're going to be sharing flyers after the webinar. And that is all I have for you today. Now we've set aside some time for questions that you might have for any of the speakers. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open it up and pass it over to Shelley on our team, who I believe is going to be sharing some questions.
If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand using the hand function. I guess is the right terminology, and we can unmute you to ask questions verbally. I also have a question here, and I would say this is either for Auditor Kilgore or Signe Mary. What do you feel are the greatest areas of opportunity for increasing the financial health of our residents? A second point, has COVID changed the answer you would have given 9 months ago? So what do you feel are the greatest areas of opportunity for increasing the financial health of our residents, and has COVID impacted your response?
I will, this is Megan Kilgore. I'll offer a couple remarks and I'll turn it over to Signe Mary. You know, here locally, yes, I would say my answer has changed, but that's the nature of any economic event that will dictate important, response times. And, if there's one event that, where we can honestly say the faster we act, the better our outcomes will be, it's through COVID. My objective right now as auditor is to try and bridge the gap for anyone who is experiencing economic loss that might be short-term and might be rooted really in the inability to work or find work as a result of this economic event. In terms of the foundation, of where I think our city, a key thing for me is education. The more I get into this job, the more convinced I am that the pathways from poverty to prosperity is really guided by education. And so we all as a city spend a lot of time, especially working with our partners locally like Columbus State, who I think does a phenomenal job. But I'm particularly proud of a few programs where we're trying to actually simply keep students enrolled at Columbus State. If you're facing, I think you hit on something, you're facing an economic sudden loss, like your car breaks down. That's a quick, economic event that could actually pull you out of school because of you having to make a decision between tuition or getting your car repaired. And that's something that we can't help with. So for me as auditor, looking short term at simply bridging the financial gap, and then also long term, and this is going to take years to unravel. But let me hear Sydney Mary's thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I'd say that some of the greatest opportunities are getting residents bank accounts, and I think that has changed my answer since COVID. I think one of the things that we saw as the federal government put out stimulus is that the people that received them last, or not at all, were often the people who needed them the most. And that was because it was hardest to get them the stimulus money. So that I think changed a little bit. And then, the other great opportunities are right now to, ensure that, Columbus residents aren't evicted from their housing. That homelessness is extremely, detrimental and costly too for the city. And so there, I'm excited to see the Financial Navigator, because providing coaching like that is an evidence-based way to improve outcomes for people. And that will help with debt management so that their credit reports, they're not paying so much to access emergency loans. And so I think, yeah.
All right, and we have a question from Teresa Gary. We will unmute your line and you can ask your question.
Thank you so much. So in kind of viewing what Karina was showing about the financial navigators and kind of highlighting where some of the supportive services that the residents might need, a couple of questions came to mind. One, because when a car breaks down, that is probably one of the biggest things that will impact a person, especially a single mother, in whether or not she can go to work, whether or not she can get to class, whether or not she can, go to the grocery store, whatever her needs are, it's going to greatly impact her. So my questions are, one, if a person were to call 211 to get to a financial navigator, and we know that it may take them about 24 to 48 hours to respond, what organizations are readily available to support that resident in that financial situation? And then the second question is it a warm handoff? While those resources may be available, are those organizations or those supportive services, ready and willing to give them the support that they need immediately? Because we know the amount of days that they miss from work, the amount of days that they can't, get their child over to childcare so that they can go to work, or maybe they need to get food in the house, or it just impacts their overall well-being. So how quickly are the residents going to be receiving the support that they need so that they can get back on track with their life?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. I will say that the transportation issue in particular was the most surprising for us, but it also makes sense, complete sense, as you've been able to draw those connections. And it also, I think, highlighted a huge gap we have in our system here in Columbus. So I only know of one subsidized kind of car repair, car support program. And I know that the county, Franklin County's PRC program, does offer some support for car repair. I believe you have to have children, be lower income, and also have children to qualify for that. And I believe it's a one-time thing. I don't think it's a quick fix. Like you mentioned, when time is of the essence, I don't think that's something that women or families in general can access quickly. So I think, again, it highlights a huge gap. Now, we do have some promising things on the horizon for 2021. Our city attorney's office actually has started to explore a partnership with Columbus State. So Columbus State has an automotive repair program where they have students that are learning how to fix cars, and they're starting to explore doing some subsidized or low-cost car repair. I'm very excited about that because I think that this is such a great need. Also in other cities and in the roadmap, we've identified a couple different programs that exist in other cities that we could potentially model or implement here in Columbus, including low cost car loans. I think that thinking about having like a liaison that can help people really walk through the steps of finding car insurance and license. But I just want to thank the caller. I want to say it was Teresa, but I didn't write your name down. But I think you're making a huge point that not only do we need to have more opportunities in Columbus, but it needs to be timely. Because like we talked about, that income disruption can be like a waterfall. So once you can't get to work or can't get to whatever it is that you need to get to, that can start a chain of events that can be really disruptive for folks. So thank you. I don't think I answered your question completely, but thank you so much for your question.
I have a question here around fees and fines. The terminology of fees and fines is something new to me, but understanding the implications it can have on a family or individual. Can you share examples of other cities or states who have taken steps in the space of fees and fines?
I could take a stab at that, but Signe Mary, do you have any knowledge in this area that might be a little bit better on the national scale than what I have to offer?
Yeah, this is raising a very good point, and I know it's discussed in the financial empowerment plan, and it's so important because the cumulative impacts of racist policies and practices have especially harmed communities of color, like we've heard. Some of these include predatory lending, less access to equity building opportunities like homeownership, and less access to quality jobs and training and education. But fees and fines are another potential area. And in terms of cities that are really tackling that, San Francisco has a fees and fines program where they are assessing their city budget. We had an event at Urban Institute last year where we were linking resident financial health and cities' inclusive growth, and cities seeking to just to analyze or stabilize their budgets and protect resident financial health can just take a look at, are there any regressive budget policies that are happening, and then enact policies that protect residents' financial well-being. One of these is like San Francisco's model of looking at fees and fines.
I will add to the other part of that question, like other examples. I mean, we have heard everything from just parking tickets that build up and then could, end up becoming a warrant, and then you get pulled over and suddenly you have a warrant for your arrest and you could lose your license. So parking tickets can be one. Sometimes code enforcement violations can add up and be a financial difficulty for our residents. So the general idea here is that we don't want to unfairly penalize folks who might simply just be dealing with poverty. So sometimes you can't move your car because it doesn't run, and then you get a parking ticket. Or sometimes you get a code violation because of the need for maintenance on your home, but that you can't afford. So these are things that can build up and really, again, kind of add to that domino effect.
We did have a question about IDA accounts. And would the city ever consider an IDA program for car repairs or more programs offering relief?
I can jump in, but I will say, Signe Mary, you unmuted. So do you have an idea there?
Just that there, at Urban Institute, we did randomized control trial evaluation, which is the gold standard evaluation of IDA programs, individual development programs. and found that they increased savings, low-income participants' savings, so that those emergency savings. We saw decreased hardship, so that that ability to pay for car repairs. And so just that those are a very evidence-based and effective strategy for increasing savings and then reducing the hardship that families face.
Yeah, I want to give kudos to the person who asked that question because that's a great idea. I have heard of IDA accounts or individual development accounts, I think is what this stands for buying a home or starting a business or going to school or also buying a car, but I haven't heard about the idea of having it for car repairs. So that's a great idea. And I will say, yes, I would of course consider that. I think, based on the momentum, we are definitely going to be trying to do something around these transportation needs that we're hearing. Back to you, Shelley.
All right, we have a question from Heidi House. We'll unmute your line.
Hi, my name is Heidi House. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, awesome. I'm the co-founder and executive director of a young nonprofit organization. We call it a mom profit. We are by single mothers for single mothers. We're a grassroots collective that started in late 2018. And we support single mother families with resources, education, and community. And so we were coming together to really acknowledge the fact that so few people understand the situation of single mothers. And so we wanted to come together and empower each other. So we found ourselves very strapped in this season because we're a young nonprofit, and because of that, we have had a hard time accessing greater resources, but we have been overwhelmed with need by single mother families. So we've been addressing on the grassroots level, we've been addressing food insecurity and transportation and emergency funds for single mothers during this time since COVID began in March, since the first shutdown. So my question is really, well, first of all, I just wanted to share our organization with you. I hope you will check us out and support us. It's motherful.org. And also, I just wanted to ask what your advice for us would be as far as procuring resources to give to single mothers who are struggling so much. Their mental health, their constant threat of being evicted, transportation problems, all of those things are very real to us. We serve about we have about 50 moms in our collective, and beyond that, we've been serving around 200 single mother families this year with our different services, and we just really need support. And I'm just curious what suggestions you might have for me.
Wow. Well, I want to first of all just say thank you so much for sharing. That is really exciting, and talk about seeing a need and doing something about it. Thank you for your innovation. When I was sharing the results that we heard from speaking directly to residents, I highlighted the top two, transportation and debt. But the other thing we heard that was also a surprise that I didn't get to share because of time constraints was the need for family supports. One of the things we heard the most from women is that they need to connect to other women and other families. I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. I was just going to say, would you mind muting yourself and then just unmute maybe? Thank you. So we heard family supports, whether it's being, connecting to other families, being able to navigate the system, kind of that mom to mom or family to family resource is so important. And it's something I feel like we've lost a little bit in today's society, especially since we can't gather, right? So I think your idea is super exciting. I'm so glad that you have started this nonprofit. In terms of supports that we could give you, there's going to be some information after this Q&A segment where we're going to be sharing our website and also an email. And then I would also love to connect your moms to our financial navigators. We're going to have some flyers after the webinar. And if you if you signed into this WebEx, which I think you did, obviously, since you're talking, you're going to get an email with links to those flyers. So we'd love you to share those flyers with your moms. And then also, if we can add you to our database so we can tell more moms about your program, we would love to do that. So hopefully that answered your question. And back to you, Shelley, or if anyone else unmutes and wants to talk, we can also have another answer to that.
We have a question from Matthew Glover. So Matthew, we will unmute your line.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I don't know how close we are to time, but you mentioned earlier in the presentation that I believe women and people of color, or I think you said women, are experiencing negative impacts of COVID at a higher rate than others. And I was aware of that coming in, and I was thinking about financial empowerment and tying it together. There is a correlation to equitable payment and industry type to the impacts of COVID. And so, is there any work being done to address systemic inequality in work, either workplace and pay equity in our footprint in order to encourage financial empowerment?
That sounds like a great question for the Women's Commission.
Yes.
Absolutely. This is Shelley. I'd be glad to take that. The Women's Commission, we launched work around the Columbus Commitment. So it's a voluntary initiative that we are asking employers to join. And we originally started the conversation, 3 years ago around pay equity, and realizing that pay equity is just a small piece of gender and racial equity in the workplace. So what we want to do is help employers, to your point, whatever industry you sit in, there are opportunities to address gender and racial equity within that industry, whether it be policy shifts, whether it be culture in the conversation internally, how women and people of color are promoted within organizations, and also from the hiring perspective of the opportunities that are made there. We definitely have worked with many restaurants in our community. I think of healthcare industries where we see minimum wages going up to $15 an hour in a lot of our healthcare systems for many women who are employed in those positions. So I do feel that we have a lot of employers coming to the table of strong interest, and now it's our opportunity to. So really, I feel, and we can have signed on, and with that comes opportunities of learning and resources. We have another question here from Kim Stans. What's a realistic year one savings goal for a single parent or family living in poverty? Is it $2,000, $500?
I think what is, so hopeful about some months after a financial disruption. So I would say, the most important thing is to get started, or if there's an extra paycheck in any cycle. So, 2,000 is excellent. So I would say, just get started and 259 to 740. We do see huge differences in lifetime earnings and how they widen the racial and wealth gap. And as I mentioned, employers, about 50% of employers will check your credit report as part of that hiring. So I think the financial navigators that you're setting up, and cleaning up credit reports, that is something that could be helpful that you're already doing.
From Ashley, and this is probably for Karina. How does one become a financial navigator? Are they volunteers, and is there training involved?
Yeah, so there was a slide in my deck that I took out because I wanted to shorten it. But we currently have 2 full-time navigators. We have one located at LSS 211 and one located at Legal Aid. So we manage the program here at the city, but our navigators are partner nonprofits. There is a training that they have to undergo. And in fact, financial navigator is not something we invented in Columbus. So try that stuff. Thank you.
And I think we've captured all of the questions that have come in through Q&A and through the raised hands. Oh, we have one final question here from Ashley. I work at a nonprofit here in Columbus.
Contact us and let us know that you're interested via email. We're going to be sharing an email, and then we'll also probably put it in the chat, but it'll be at the end of the presentation. A little bit about FinCap as we start to round out our presentation here. So I'm going to introduce Netta Whitman. She's the Director of Housing Advisory Services at...
Thank you. I'm happy to be here as one of the founding partners of the Financial Capability Network, or FinCap, of Central Ohio, which is a collaboration of organizations working to strengthen the capacity of financial service providers so that they can deliver and facilitate access to relevant, engaging, and high-quality financial services and products for low and moderate income individuals. The FinCap network works to build shared knowledge of existing resources, increase resource availability and capacity, and develop shared definitions. Another key goal of FinCap is to provide learning exchanges or trainings for cross-industry support services. Through the FinCap network, we are able to increase referral resources, improve client experiences, and make a greater impact for the clients that we serve. No one agency in Columbus is able to meet the complete financial stability needs of the region, so the FinCap network is striving to combine the efforts of multiple agencies to reach more individuals and families. The FinCap network is excited to be a partner in the financial empowerment roadmap work and growing our network of organizations who are interested in improving the financial stability of Central Ohio residents. If you would like to join us, please email info@fincapnetwork.org. To learn more about us, visit our website at www.fincapnetwork.org. Thank you, and I will go ahead and pass it over to Kelsey, the legislative aide for Council President Pro Tem Brown.
Thank you so much, Ms. Whitman, and to all of the other speakers who have done just such a great job this morning. I am your final speaker this morning, still morning, and I hope to give you a good send-off. So it was just over a year ago that we began the development of our financial empowerment roadmap. And that year was filled with conversations with leaders of the community, nonprofit leaders, those in the financial institutions, and importantly, with residents themselves. Those residents, the women we learned from the process, are really at the heart of this roadmap and at the center of the work we've laid out for the future. Alongside our release of the financial empowerment roadmap earlier this fall, we also, at the same time, kicked off our first program, which we felt was urgently needed by residents given the coronavirus. And that's the Financial Navigator program, the FinNav program, which is a partnership between LSS 211 Central Ohio and Legal Aid. And if we go to the, she's got my flyer up here. So we have this wonderful flyer that I'll be asking you to help spread the word about later, but I want to tell you a little bit about what this is briefly. So again, the FinNav program was urgent just because this virus, the pandemic, has been one whopping economic shock for families. And so what we just couldn't live with was the idea that families would go without the help they need simply for a lack of knowledge about how to access this. So this service builds off of the great work that 211 already does, but it allows callers to talk to a trained financial navigator when they ring to help them connect to resources, but also to make a plan. When you're sitting in crisis, it can be so hard to understand the path forward. And so a trained financial navigator will help residents make a plan, set priorities about how to address their financial situation. We are so proud of this program. And again, we'd like your help to market it. And that means, so if you've registered for the webinar and you're watching this on WebEx, then you're actually going to get a follow-up with the flyers. But if you are watching this on Facebook, as I know some of you are, we'd actually like you to send an email at the address we'll provide at the very end of this so that we can give you, keep you up to date on what we're doing, but help you access these files to share on social media. It's so important that residents understand that there's help out there for them and someone to hold their hand for the next steps in their journey. So finally, on that note, I know if you're a nonprofit, you're providing services. We talk a lot about our nonprofit partners in the FinNav work, but we need to understand what service you're providing. So if you're interested in becoming a referral partner, please also reach out and let us know how we can market the service that they may need. Okay, next slide. Looking ahead. So I've talked to you a little bit about the Financial Navigator pilot program. We have an eye on sustaining that program for the future and providing a report out to the community about the great results we expect from it. But there's also, a few other good pieces of work I want to highlight today, although the list of what's in the actual roadmap is too long to go through right now. So just a couple of highlights, things that we're really excited about. Is launching a coalition to expand banking access. First, we envision a city where every resident can access safe and affordable banking options. Having a bank account is one of the first steps towards becoming financially empowered. But to do that, we have to work to build trust between communities and financial institutions. We have to break ties that they may have with predatory lenders. We're siphoning away hard-earned money that they need, and we have to work to create the right banking options for them. We're so grateful to have leaders in the financial institution space on this call and who are excited about this work and share in this vision, for our city. Secondly, we want to invest in a professional financial counseling as a city service. If we want residents truly to become financially secure, then we have to provide concrete support to them in terms of helping them improve their credit scores, tackling their debt, and making a financial plan for the future. We know we already have great organizations doing this type of work in the city, and we hope to strengthen our collaboration to help more families access this service. As Signamary said, one's credit score in particular can affect your ability to get housing, a job, access education, and so much more. So providing this service truly is a no-brainer for the city. So we're excited to invest and expand on the great work already being done. And finally, while we are, again, really, truly excited to create these new resources to drive the systems change, we know that part of our leadership has to include looking at our own practices around fees and fines, which brings us to that last piece around developing a financial justice platform for municipal fines and fees. Going back to that idea of economic shocks, we know that financially insecure family, for them, it might be something as small as getting a parking ticket that sends them in a tailspin towards poverty, lasting poverty. And if a resident can't afford to pay that parking ticket, again, for example, it can snowball into a much, much larger problem. We're committed to looking at our own practices around fines and fees that we know can disproportionately hurt those living in poverty. We want to create more equitable, fair systems of accountability that treat people again, fairly and don't disproportionately harm those who might be in a financially insecure position. A number of our speakers have referenced this bucket of work, which we are really excited about. It probably will be our most difficult, but also perhaps the most rewarding for our residents. I can't say it enough. We are just so jazzed about every element of this work. I think you can hear you've heard the enthusiasm in every speaker's voice, and it's true that we all are united around a pretty big mission to financially empower our resident women and families. We couldn't have created this roadmap without the help of so many partners, our funders, the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund, and local leaders I've mentioned before. But we also won't be able to achieve our goals without you either. If you'd like to be involved in any of the objectives I've outlined or other speakers have outlined, please send a note to the Women's Commission at the email address provided there. It can be as scrappy as sending your signature so that we can add you to our list. If you have any questions or want to get involved, please do reach out. I want to repeat also the FinCap email. If you're a nonprofit who wants to become a bigger collaborator in this area of work, please feel free to reach out to info@fincapnetwork.org. As has been said before and remains true, when we invest in the financial empowerment of women and families, we truly uplift our whole city. So thank you for joining us on that journey. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. And I believe that brings our presentation to an end. So thank you so much to all of our participants. And we're going to go ahead and end the webinar now.